Tracy Ray never liked sitting still for too long, especially not in rooms that felt like glass fishbowls filled with breathing statues. And yet here she was, nestled into the cold seat of the rearmost desk inside the Galactic Academy's grand Logic Atrium, an architectural marvel that looked like it had been designed by a sentient prism, and a particularly anxious mirror. Walls shimmered, light bent, and whispers of energy hummed from the very ceiling. It was beautiful, but it didn't feel alive. Beside her, rows of alien cadets sat with their bodies or projections of them hunched over crystalline terminals. All across the chamber, dozens of species, some wrapped in silk membranes, others breathing through oscillating vents, prepped for the interlogic final. This was the test that had broken philosophers, ruined scholars, and made at least one sentient nebula cry. It was whispered about in 10 languages, feared in 37, and revered in 2 that had no concept of fear at all. Tracy rested her chin in her palm. Her legs swung lazily beneath the desk. "You are not nervous?" She glanced sideways. Seated at the next desk was Nassel Corey, a Tashari cadet whose body seemed to refract light with each movement. Shaped like a humanoid constructed from semi-transparent crystal leaves, he shimmered with every breath, a halo of softly pulsing nerves looped across his collarbone. "Nervous about what?" Tracy asked. "The final?" Tracy shrugged. "Looks like a bunch of puzzles." Nassel Corey's eyes flickered in a soft green. It was a Tashari sign of restrained disbelief. "You should not be here," he said flatly. "You sound like my professor," Tracy muttered, stretching her arms behind her head. "Your methods are unintelligible, or just different." Before Nassel Corey could respond, a hum settled across the chamber. All at once, the lights dimmed and the test core descended from above, a floating black cube with glowing symbols that writhed like living equations. The silence that followed wasn't merely quiet, it was oppressive, heavy, like the universe itself was holding its breath. A voice, or something like it, entered their minds. "You are about to enter the final threshold of cognitive refinement. The interlogic final does not seek answers. It seeks to dismantle the assumptions that shape your logic. Only by shedding what you believe to be true can you survive." Tracy blinked. Nassel Corey's body stiffened beside her. And then it began. A holographic structure shimmered into existence above her desk. It twisted, unfolded, then split into layers of impossible geometry. Some lines reversed themselves mid-curve. Others rotated on axes that didn't seem to exist. "Oh boy," Tracy muttered. "It's like one of those magic eye puzzles." Nassel Corey was already deep in concentration. His fingertips glowed faintly as he interfaced with his neural quill. His aura shimmered with intense focus. Tracy, meanwhile, pulled a stubby pencil from her pocket and a folded notepad from inside her sleeve. Her notepad had a sticker of a smiley dinosaur on it. She sketched the shape slowly, tapping her eraser against her lip. "That's just a triangle pretending to be clever," she muttered. "NASL single quotes KORI twitched. "You must not speak aloud." "Why?" "Afraid the shape might hear me." More cadets began to tremble. One gasped, then slumped as a proctor swiftly floated down and enveloped him in a calming field. Another alien, who appeared to be composed entirely of music, began to emit sharp, discordant tones. Tracy stayed calm. Her pencil scratched softly against the paper. "This part folds into this part, and this here is just a circle being dramatic." Nassel Corey stared at her, his whole body gently pulsing. "How are you translating these shapes so quickly?" "I'm not," Tracy replied. "I'm seeing what they remind me of. This one? It's like one of those paper fortune tellers we used to fold in 3rd grade." Nassel Corey's form dimmed with confusion. "You are not using neural interfaces or formal structures." "Nope. Just lines, shapes, patterns." The next structure appeared. It spiraled into itself like an imploding galaxy. Tracy folded her notepad in half, peeked from the side, then stood and walked one step to the left. She crouched. "Ha," she said, grinning. "It's just a flat spiral. Optical trick." Nassel Corey stared, stunned. "That is not permitted." "No one said I couldn't stand up," she replied. "Rules are just perspective filters." Nassel Corey had never failed a single test in his life. Every calculation, every theorem, every recursion, he'd mastered them. But this human, this girl who drew on dinosaur notepads, was dancing through the trial like it was finger painting. Worse yet, part of him admired her. As the test escalated, the room filled with tension, screams, static, faint gasps of overstrained minds. Cadets collapsed like wilting petals. The mindwaver proctors floated silently among them. And Tracy was humming. "What are you doing?" Nassel Corey finally asked. "Solving. With music. Makes shapes easier. That is not how logic works. Maybe not your logic." He couldn't stop watching her. The way she tilted her head. The way her eyes lit up when she cracked a pattern. The way she laughed softly at one of the illusions. And then she glanced at him. Something in her gaze softened. "You okay?" "I am confused," Nassel Corey admitted. "Good. Means you're learning." She held up her notepad. "See this? This is the current problem. But if you look at it this way," she rotated the page, "it's just two overlapping shapes." Nassel Corey leaned forward involuntarily. His hand brushed hers. The contact sent a jolt through them both. Crystal-touched skin. For a moment, they forgot the exam, forgot the pulsing equations, the collapsing minds, the tension. There was just the feel of two beings existing on wildly different frequencies, finding harmony. "I do not understand you," he whispered. "You're not supposed to," she replied. "You're just supposed to not give up." Her eyes held his, not with challenge, but with warmth. "I thought you came here to beat the test," Nassel Corey said. "Nah," she replied. "I came here to find someone who'd solve it with me." His aura pulsed uncertainly. A soft glow rose from his collarbone to his cheek. It was a Teshari flush. Tracy grinned as the test core spun faster and began to hum with rising intensity. Two figures remained standing, one human, one Teshari. Surrounded by collapse, confusion, and chaos, they found something neither expected. Understanding, and perhaps something deeper. As the final phase began, Nassel Corey found himself no longer fearing the shapes, because now, when he looked at them, he saw them through her eyes, and they made sense. Milo Danver never meant to leave Earth, but sometimes boredom has a gravitational pull all its own. He'd once been a public school systems engineer in Ohio, rebuilding educational aids and fixing outdated testing software. Nothing fancy. But after a messy breakup and a realization that he didn't know what he wanted anymore, Milo had taken a random aptitude test for the interspecies diplomatic corps. He didn't expect to qualify. He definitely didn't expect to score high in cross-cultural logic adaptation. And he absolutely didn't expect to be assigned to Orbital Station 417b, a floating embassy hub somewhere near the lilac stars of the Valen Cloud. His first week there, Milo was told about the incident. Some human girl had passed the grand interlogic final by solving it with drawings and a snack bar. The alien mathematicians had been furious. They rewrote the test, locking it behind a new level of complexity. Then they made it adaptive, evolving to challenge not just logic, but perception itself. So when the station's Cultural Council announced a live demonstration of the upgraded test, they needed a human, someone low profile, someone expendable. Milo had been halfway through his sandwich when they picked him. "Wait, what? Me?" he said, blinking at the briefing screen. "I fix teaching software. I'm not some logic savant." "We're not asking you to pass it," the diplomat said. "We're asking you to show that humans aren't a fluke." Milo didn't like being bait. But then he met Asian. She arrived wrapped in sound. Literally, her body emitted harmonic pulses with every step, a shifting web of light and vibration that reflected her mood and thoughts. Valen code harpists didn't speak the way humans did. They resonated, shared emotional frequencies through pattern and tone. Milo couldn't read her at first. To him, she looked like a humanoid silhouette built from stained glass and sonar. "She's here to observe your methodology," said a translator bot. "The Valen have invested heavily in the revised logic test. She will report on your performance." Milo tried to smile politely. "Great, no pressure." Asian pulsed one slow blue, shortwave. Curiosity. Milo was led to the testing chamber, a smaller version of the one Tracy Ray had faced. The test core hovered above the terminal, symbols glowed and rotated. Everything felt sharp, like it was waiting to cut him. He sat down, adjusted his seat, then looked up at Asian, who remained outside the field, observing. Her frequencies shifted between pale greens and curious ambers. "Okay," Milo muttered. "Let's not die." The first problem unfolded. Instantly, Milo felt like his eyes were being tricked. The shape spun in for dimensions, with lines intersecting at impossible angles. "Nope," he said aloud, "not solving that the normal way." He reached into his bag and pulled out a tiny magnetic ruler and a notepad. He always carried one habit. From his Earth days. He started drawing. Outside the field, Asian pulsed twice. The translator bot beeped. "She wishes to know why you are not using the interface." "Because the interface is giving me a migraine," Milo said. This makes sense." He outlined the edges of the shape, noticed it folded into 3 repeating sub-patterns. "There," he murmured, "that's just a reflection loop, with a fake depth axis." He drew a triangle inside the spiral, then mirrored it. The terminal flashed green. Azhu in single quotes S field turned pale pink. "Surprise. Was that approval?" Milo asked. The translator remained quiet. The next shape was worse. Like an MC Escher sketch got stuck in a blender. Milo tried to trace it, but the movement made his head ache. "You Acha," he said. "We're not playing that game." He looked at Asian. "I know this thing's supposed to be smarter now, right?" She pulsed slowly. "Agreement. Then let's get dumber," he muttered. He drew a smiley face in the middle of the page. Then he drew the shape around it. Simplified. Basic geometry. He ignored the curves and focused on straight lines. Line, angle, repeat. His terminal blinked green again. Azhun stepped forward. "Oh," he said. "Did I break it?" The translator chirped. "She would like to sit beside you." "What?" "For observation." Asian entered the field. The air shimmered slightly. Her presence made the test pulse faster. She sat beside him, folding her harmonic limbs beneath her, her form humming with calm inquiry. "You don't think in steps, do you?" he said. Her pulse vibrated with a soft, echoing tone. "Me neither," Milo said. "I just guess until it makes sense." He handed her the notepad. She tilted her head. Then she began to hum. Her frequency shifted with the patterns he'd drawn. For each line, a note. For each shape, a rhythm. It wasn't just music. It was math. "Wait," Milo said, heart speeding. "Are you translating my sketches into song?" She pulsed with amber warmth. "That's incredible." The next puzzle descended. Asian reached out, humming softly, and touched his pencil. She began to draw beside him, not shapes, waves, harmonic arcs, symbols of her people. Milo stared at the page where logic met music. And it clicked. "It's the same pattern," he whispered. "Just expressed differently." She looked at him, and, for the first time, he felt something spark, not from fear, not from confusion, but from recognition. She wasn't observing him anymore. She was solving with him. They drew. They hummed. The test shifted, faster, harder. The system pushed against them. But together, they flowed. Logic turned into sketch, sketch into sound, sound into symmetry. The chamber dissolved around them. All that remained were lines and song. And each other. Why did they design a test that punishes difference? Milo asked quietly. Azhu in single quotes S pulse dimmed. Maybe because they were afraid of being wrong. She reached forward, brushed his hand with hers. The contact sang. Milo inhaled sharply. "Is this? Are we?" She pulsed blue-red. Truth shared. No translation needed. They were falling, not into confusion, but into alignment, like parallel lines meeting at infinity. His name was Carol, and he had no need for shapes. Among the Lyranthi, aquatic-born species evolved in pressurized gas seas. Beneath the surface of a tidal moon, thought was non-linear. Memory, identity, logic, these were not separate functions, but merged into a flowing internal stream called the memory tide. To solve a problem was to dive beneath its surface, to feel it wrap around you until meaning rose like breath from the deep. Carol was known among his kind as a lucid drifter, a Lyranthi who could hold a form long enough to interface with non-Lyranthi systems. He wore a stabilizing exosuit shaped like a thin exoshell of quivering metal filament, with gently shifting colors that mirrored his thoughts. It kept him upright, dry, steady. He didn't like it. but he liked her. Her name was Anaya. She was from a species called the Alari, whose cognitive architecture was based on layered empathy, a kind of cascading emotional mirror. Logic. Alari solved problems by projecting themselves into the perspective of the question. Every test, every riddle, became a small life they lived and felt through. When Carol first met her, he was trying to solve the mirror parabola. It was a problem introduced in the latest version of the inner logic trials, one so complex it was said to have no clear solution, only emotional contradiction, a logic paradox embedded in rotational symmetry. Most gave up, some hallucinated, one vanished. Anaya didn't solve it. She forgave it. And somehow, that worked. Kharil, mystified, approached her. You did not break the pattern. No, she said, gently. I listened to it, and it unraveled itself. Patterns are not sentient. Some of them pretend to be. Carol couldn't argue. He had spent 2 hours inside the mirror parabola simulation, floating in a zero-gravity sensory chamber, trying to reshape his own memory tied around its contours, and failed. He asked her to show him. She said yes. Together they entered the curve again. The simulation chamber reshaped itself into a spiraling prism of overlapping fields. Inside, structures of translucent glyphs moved in patterns that reversed. When observed directly, it is like watching thought breathe, Carol whispered. Anaya stood beside him, barefoot on a platform that shimmered like ice over flame. We do not need to defeat the spiral, she said. We only need to let it complete its breath. Carol watched as she raised her hand, let her fingers trace an arc not yet formed. The pattern shifted, the spiral tightened, then sighed open. You gave it permission, he said. No, she said, smiling. I stopped resisting. Carol's suit shimmered pale blue, confusion, curiosity, awe. How do you know when to feel the answer? When the answer is not afraid of being seen. Carol studied her face. Her calmness was not dispassion, it was presence. She did not conquer the test. She invited it to reveal itself. In Lyranthi culture, the idea of soft logic was absurd. But here she was, proving it possible, and something stirred in him. He asked her to stay. She did. For the next week, they practiced together, not solving tests, but experiencing them, entering logic mazes as dreamwalkers, surrendering certainty, finding the places where their minds overlapped. She taught him empathy without words. He taught her stillness without retreat. They shared memory, literal memory through a resonance chamber, her emotional feedback loop since with his memory tied. He showed her what it felt like to be born into a sea that remembers everything. She showed him what it meant to be understood, without definition. On the final day, the Academy summoned them to attempt the curve once more. Not the mirror parabola, something new, something derived from both their failures and strengths. An impossible shape. No clear entry point, no logic surface. It rotated, but didn't. Shimmered, but didn't reflect. Kharil stepped forward. Anaya took his hand. They stood as one. We do not understand it, Carol said. We are not meant to. Anaya replied. We are meant to witness. They let the shape move. They followed. It bent around them, reconfigured their breath. Distorted time. Logic tried to demand resolution. They let it go. And as they floated in the shifting layers, Carol whispered, this is like falling in love. Anaya turned, eyes shimmering. No, she said. This is like being seen for the first time. And the shape opened. And they passed, not by solving it, but by becoming part of its symmetry. Cinna was not supposed to speak, not during trial mode, not during calibration, and definitely not during a diagnostic sweep of the inner logic sphere, which had begun showing minor fractal instability on the 5th layer. But she couldn't help it. Her breath caught as the pattern flashed into view 12 mirrored fields of recursion, each reflecting the others, each hiding a message. That's not a logic spiral, she whispered. Beside her, the technician's mandibles clicked in alarm. Verbalization during interface risks collapse. Cinna blinked, lips trembling. Sorry. I saw something. She wasn't lying. She had seen something beautiful. Cinna had never been beautiful herself. She had been bred, like many of her species, for sensory computation, hairless, translucent-skinned, high forehead. genetically tuned for accelerated pattern decoding. The work suited her, or so she thought. Then she met Rovan. He was a deviant. Not in the criminal sense, though. In his culture, that was a thin line, but intellectually, he believed logic was personal, and worse, expressive. In a society that valued neutrality of mind above all, Rovan painted his thoughts with color and shape. He once showed her a sketch of a logic problem, not a solution. A sketch. It looked like a bird in flight. That's not math, she had told him. Then maybe math is too small. She'd laughed, quietly, then stared at the page for a long time. He told her the shapes listened. What do you mean? Some problems, he said, tapping. His tempo aren't waiting to be solved, they're waiting to be heard. Now, in front of the inner logic sphere, she saw it again. The shape, not a bird this time. A hand. Reaching. She completed the test barely. Her terminal flickered amber, not green, and she expected to be flagged for protocol deviation. Instead, she was summoned. By Rovan. He was no longer a student. He was part of the sphere's design team. He met her in the neural architecture wing, standing in front of a glass spiral suspended midair. His hair had grown, untamed. His eyes were brighter. Then she remembered. They told me you saw something. I don't know what I saw. I think you do. He took her hand, gently. For a moment, the lab's sterile lights felt warmer. They've changed the sphere, he whispered. It's evolving. You're not supposed to see the patterns. They're supposed to pass through you. But they don't, she said. They stop. They echo. He nodded. Double quotes. I think it's waiting. For what? For someone who doesn't try to fix it. Cinna looked down. She'd spent her entire life fixing broken symmetry. That's what her people did. Purge. Dissonance. Restore clean flow. But what if the dissonance wasn't a flaw? What if it was a voice? They ran simulations together. Hundreds. In each. She tried to listen. Not to interpret. Not to reshape. Just to listen. And it changed. The curve began to adapt, not in resistance, but in cooperation. Like a duet. She felt it. It wanted to be known. And Rovan watched her, not just her process, the way she tilted her head, the small frown when she concentrated, the joy when a pattern folded into grace. One evening, beneath the amber light of the fractal canopy in the observatory chamber, he kissed her. It was soft, hesitant, like he was asking a question without words. She answered without hesitation. The next day, the curve opened fully, the pattern inside. Not a solution, a memory. Hers. From childhood. A sketch she had made on a steamed window pane, a series of overlapping curves that looked like the inside of a conch shell. She had forgotten it. The pattern. HADN single quotes T. Rovan stepped back, breath held. It's you, he said. Cinna couldn't speak, because it was. Somehow, the curve had pulled from her subconscious, listened so deeply that it reconstructed her earliest wonder. Not logic. Intimacy. She turned to him. I think it's not a test. What is it then? She smiled. An invitation. Noah sat alone at the edge of the observatory spiral, her boots dangling over nothing, eyes half closed against the spectrum field. From here, the logic we've shimmered in bands of gentle iridescence across the deep curve of the testing chamber. Most cadets feared this view. It reminded them of their place. Tiny, temporary, flawed. Not Noah. She liked feeling small. Because small things saw what giants missed. You're going to be late, a soft voice said behind her. She turned. Ire and stood in the arched doorway, cradling a half-filled logic prism in his palms. The glow lit the shadows of his face, his soft brown skin and darker eyes curved with gentle concern. I'm not going back in, she said. You passed phase 1, doesn't mean I understand it. He stepped closer. Maybe that's the point. Noah smiled faintly. She had met Iron during the first simulation cycle, a shared corridor of chaotic logic, meant to destabilize baseline assumptions. While others fell into recursive traps or spiraled into contradiction loops, they had found the same foothold. Music. Not literally, but the structure of the pattern, its rise and collapse, its pause and pulse had reminded them both of a lullaby. They didn't speak at first, just looked at one another across the field of shattered logic, sharing the same realization. This Wasn't a puzzle. This was a rhythm. Since then, they had returned together. Not for testing. Not even for practice. Just to listen. To sit in the corner of a system built for impossibility and feel the moments where everything almost made sense. And sometimes, more than sometimes, it did. Irene sat beside her now. You still have the sketches? She reached into her satchel, pulled out the small notebook, edges frayed, pages soft from use. She flipped to a page near the middle. A curve, overlaid with dots. Then another, the same, mirrored. It followed me, she said softly. Last session. The shape repeated, but it waited this time. It didn't finish itself. What did you do? Nothing. I just looked at it, and it stopped collapsing. Irene nodded slowly. They're teaching it to respond. Or maybe, Noah said, tracing the mirrored lines, it's remembering. He looked at her sideways. Remembering what? She glanced at him, then down. Double quotes us. It wasn't a theory. It was a truth she couldn't explain. Somewhere deep, inside the inner logic core, something had begun to shift, not from calculation, but connection. It wasn't growing smarter. It was growing relational. Noah leaned into Irene's shoulder, head tilted just slightly. What if the curve isn't measuring thought? She murmured. What if it's measuring love? He didn't laugh. Instead, he rested his chin gently atop her head. Then we've already passed. In the final phase, they didn't test separately. Without announcement, without precedent. The Academy summoned them as a pair. Others watched, some with scorn, some with awe. As they stepped into the prism together. No instructions. Just the shape. A single line at first. Then a second, mirrored. A third threading between. Noah and Irene reached out. Not to solve, but to reflect. They opened the notebook. Held hands. And traced. The curve unfolded like a memory, like music, like breath. It did not reward speed. It rewarded honesty. Their pacing mattered. Their pause. Their patience with each other's process. The test blurred. Became a moment. Became stillness. When they stepped out, the administrators didn't speak. Not at first. Then the room flickered with green. Joint validation. A voice said over the intercom. Non-standard completion, interlogic score, unclassifiable. Noah looked up. Does that mean we failed? Irene squeezed her hand. No, said the administrator. It means the curve has chosen. That night, they sat again at the observatory spiral. Irene hummed softly. Noah sketched the same curve she always did. But this time, the curve drew itself, and inside it, faintly, were two mirrored figures. Smiling. Symmetry remembered.